Welcome to today's episode of Financial Fluency. Today I have Jen Hemphill from Her Money Matters podcast. Jen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Jen. I love your podcast, right? And I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, thanks. And I've been on your podcast, which I so
Yes.
enjoyed doing. I got to talk a lot about special needs finance, which I do a little on here. Because usually I'm interviewing other people, I don't answer questions. So that we'll put a link to that too if you want to.
Oh, absolutely.
It's with special needs and wants to talk some about all those different things. But today, we were just talking before I hit record about the fact that we can't really pretend it's not November 9th when we're recording this, the day after the election.
Right.
And we're both feeling a little rough from being up all night. And there have been lots of emotions running high and lots of things going on that we feel a lot of Americans probably feel a little out of control of today. So we were talking about what things can we control and what things can't we control. And I thought that would be an excellent focus for the show today.
No, absolutely. Because it bottoms down on your choices. We still have choices and it's up to you to make those choices. It's up to you to put them into action. And really, since we both talk money, the current the president-to-be, the president-elect can't control your budget, can't control how you spend your money, can't control how you use your credit card. So those are the things that you can control, or you definitely can control. So definitely do that. But we have seen definitely the market. Changes in the market in just a matter of a day. Those are things that we can't control, but we can control our urge to take our money out, because in these instances we have to definitely ride that wave out, because what goes down must come up, right?
Yeah, I was posting in a group yesterday when people were starting to see the wobble in the market, and especially the peso really dip. And as I was telling you earlier, my husband was checking an English bank account and noticed just how much the pound is up relative to the dollar. I think it's actually the dollar going down, not the pound going up. And they certainly had their issues a few months ago with Brexit, and we saw the big wobble, and not that everything has worked out yet, but overall, I love those moments when a financial planner or analyst will take you back. They'll back way, way up and look at the graph and see over time, over decades, over 50 years, what happens. If we believe American businesses are going to continue innovating and coming up with products that help people and succeeding in the world at large, overall, we're going to keep, hopefully, going in an upward step.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
there's definitely those trends. There's the shifts. There's lots of things at play here. So,
yeah. But I also think we should take a moment to celebrate something. Will you celebrate this with me, Jen?
Absolutely.
Last night, a woman came closer than ever before in the history of America, and a lot of other countries that haven't had a female prime minister yet, which there are definitely some that have, like England and Australia and Pakistan even. But the United States has never, and that is the closest we've gotten to shattering that massive highest class ceiling.
Absolutely. And she did a phenomenal job. And to be in that position, because as women, we have this really, to be in a position like that. Well, first of all, as women, we're emotional by nature. So I think she is very well composed in general, but I think she has to not only be, how do I put this? The leadership, the role of a leader, but she's a woman on top of that. And there's a lot of pressures involved with that. And I think to do that, that's difficult. I mean, I don't know if I can do that, because I would have ugly cried many times, probably in front of camera, who knows? So I think to be able, you have to have a lot of strength. Not that I'm not strong, but just you have to be able, it's a whole little different level, especially in politics, especially for the top office, for the top leadership office. I can't even imagine. So definitely it is a big celebration.
And I think her doing this, and it being Hillary Clinton, who went through so much as First Lady, has gone through so much as Senator, as Secretary of State. I mean, she has borne more scrutiny than probably any other female in the United States. She has had more criticism leveled at her, has had more unfair comparisons when no man would be criticized for like having a shrill voice or smiling or laughing, all the things that she's been criticized for, all the financial things that she's done, some of which are questionable, but plenty of male politicians have done all of these things, and yet the scrutiny on her was so intense and so soul destroying, I think. I mean,
Right.
talking about, the media really played a lot into all of our view of her. And yet, I mean, I was in college when Bill was Bill was the president. And I'm going to say something else here too. My very first voting experience, I voted Nader.
Okay.
And I was like, this day after the election, that was in 1998. I was a senior in college. And I was so shocked. Like, I really wanted a third party. I really didn't think my vote actually did matter that much. And the fact that I voted for Nader, and to be honest, Arizona's almost never a swing state, but still, Nader, I felt like all of us who got excited about Nader, because it is such a two-party system, we really don't get to have that chance and that choice. And I can't help thinking about people who voted third party or write-in last night are probably having a very similar feeling to the feeling I had voting Nader.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wait, I didn't mean for this to happen. Like, I was making a statement. I want a third party. I want more choices. And we all want more choices. But this consequence, it's so frustrating that we have this consequence in the U.S. and plenty of other countries can have a third party, can have a viable third party,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a crazy system. It's set up for the checks and balances and to work a certain way, but sometimes when the stars are lying a certain way, it just puts us into shock. So
yeah,
what happens.
But here in the aftermath, let's think about all the women who planned like me this morning to be telling their daughters that we had our first female president and are probably feeling a bit deflated and disempowered this morning. And we're worried about money and our economy. What do you think we can all do to help feel more powerful and like we can kind of carry on? Okay, we didn't quite make it this time, but we were close.
Right. I think we should focus on like the good that has happened, and that gives us a better energy. I think we can also, especially at the moment we're at right now, the day after the election happened, to just really disconnect from that social media, because all you're going to hear, no matter who won, I knew it was going to be a disaster in terms of people bashing the other person or people being disgruntled. But that's not going to get you anywhere. That's just going to spur more hate. That's going to spur more antagonizing conversations versus conversations where we come together. Because I don't know, people are emotional, and when emotional brings those outbursts, there's no really nice conversation to be had. So I think really staying away from social media, looking at the good that has happened, look at what you have done this year, especially this time of year. We think that we have failed in different ways. We tend to feel frustrated or depressed. Maybe our finances are where we thought they'd be, but we need to look back and see what we have done right and celebrate those things.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Yeah. And, I was thinking about like my thought back to college and Nader. I was thinking some about how this pendulum swings, how there's backlash. I feel like the Obama years, having our first African-American president and making our first tiptoeing steps towards, national health care or universal health care, gay marriage becoming legal in all 50 states during his tenure. Like a lot of people complain things weren't happening fast enough, but a lot of progressive and liberal things happened. And I think what we are seeing is the backlash against some of that too. Like,
absolutely.
We had Bill, we had Bush, we had Obama.
Yes, I agree. It's definitely, I think it's all backlash. When people are very disgruntled, and I don't know. I don't know how it works, because I was looking, you kind of get a feel for what's going on with, granted, I was tied to the TV and I told myself I was not going to watch. And I just stayed there, and you would look at social media and you'd be like, oh, things are going to go like how I want them to. It just seemed to be, that's what I thought, but it didn't. I just didn't occur that way.
I kept adding up the numbers. I'm like, okay, so if she gets Pennsylvania, I was sure she'd get Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania surprise. A few were really big surprises to me. Yes. And mostly I try not to talk politics too much on either my Facebook page or on the show, but
stay away. Right.
It's impossible today. I think I'm I'm going to give us a day to, I mean, the last few days, obviously, in the heat of things, it's been hard.
Yes.
But I think as women, in terms of what's important to us as citizens and financial beings and professional beings and family members, sometimes it's hard to see both sides. I have trouble sometimes when it comes to education and children and children's health and disability, things that really affect me and my family. It's hard to...
Right, because it all boils down, all the different issues that are on Republican sides feel this way and Democrats feel this way. And how we feel about it, it's like really what's going on in our life or what experiences we have. It all stems from that. Mm-hmm. And it's just, and you're right, it's just hard to, you definitely can feel so strongly about certain things. There's some issues that I'm like, I don't feel as strongly about, but it's really how it affects you. So I'm a military spouse. Mm-hmm. Anything military related, you best believe I am gung-ho about it. It affects my family, mm-hmm. right? So sometimes we forget that even though it affects my family, but it's not necessarily going to affect you. So you might not have as strong opinions about it. So we just kind of have to, I think it's hard to do, like you said, but we have to and that's what the president has to do. And it's such a hard job. Do what's best for everybody. How can you do that? Right? How can you really do that?
Experience is so wide. Yeah.
Right.
If you've never had a disabled loved one, or if you've never been married to someone in the military, you may have no understanding of how, changing how the deployment works completely changes things for you and your family and your children and your husband, or changing how people are paid in the military. It can have these massive ripple effects that aren't always.
Absolutely. And people in Congress don't necessarily understand that. They're just basing those decisions based on what they're told. Unless they have that experience, it might not necessarily be the best decision. So can you imagine getting all the statistics, all this research, all this information, and you're thinking you're going to decide one way, and then you get this info. I can't imagine. Even mm-hmm. as a senator or in the House, I can't even imagine, because it must be very difficult to do, for sure.
And it's a lot of responsibility. We're asking a lot of those people. But we do also elevate them, us voting for them. They are on the world stage. They're important. They have a lot of power, and we're trusting them to make those decisions with our best interest.
And I think one thing that I wanted to bring up that I know Adrienne, Adrienne Dorson, someone that we know and adore, she did a Facebook Live that really resonated with me. And it was really, really the whole point of the video, what she did of her message was, okay, so this happened. If you're not happy with it, take action. What are you going to do? So it was really getting more, the message was about getting more involved in those issues that maybe you really feel strongly about, and what can you do? Because at the end of the day, yes, we can go vote, but what are we doing as citizens to make that difference? And I don't think it necessarily has to be you need to get into politics to do that, but what can you do? It can start at home with your kids and giving them that foundation, that education. It can be like in a community setting, those type of things. And I think that was really a really strong, powerful message that she said today. Mm-hmm. Recording today.
Yeah, I didn't see that one today. I was at the dentist this morning, but but I totally agree. I've had people ask me sometimes when I've been talking maybe on somebody else's show about, issues, feminist finance issues like the wage gap and stuff. And so what can we actually do? And some of what I say is you can hire women. Like if you have a job that requires something that a woman has the skills to do, you can hire her and you can pay her fairly. If you are a woman who sets your own prices or your own rates, you can make sure that you are charging comparable rates to the men in your industry. You can always get more training if you feel like you need more training to charge those higher rates. We can support each other. We can... there's a lot that we can do. And I think some of just women coming together to have conversations. And I know you have a group for Her Money Matters, and I have a group for Financial Fluency. We have these places where we try to come together and discuss it, because I think for a lot of women, if they've never negotiated for their salary, if they've always just accepted what they were offered, mm-hmm. the first time to go and do that is hard. And I think it helps to talk to other women. Like, okay, here's what they offered me. Do you think I can counter with this? Just get some support and some outside information. And sometimes just someone being like, are you kidding? You are amazing. Like, you should be charging twice that. Like, the work you do is incredible. Because a lot of times we don't get that in our daily lives. Just having someone your cheerleader and being like, you are worth more.
I couldn't agree more. I think the conversation, whether money or whatever you're dealing with, is so powerful, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, or you underestimate what you do, or underestimate your magic, right? So seeing someone else value that just makes the world of a difference. So definitely those conversations are so critical.
Mm-hmm. And, I realized I jumped into this election stuff so quickly that I mentioned you have Her Money Matters podcast, but we haven't talked at all about what you do. And I say often, especially if I have someone who is certified or a financial professional on my show, that I am not a financial professional. I love talking to women about money. I love these discussions where we can kind of, all compare things. But you are a certified financial professional. So let's talk some about what you do for women.
Sure. So basically, my fancy lingo is called an accredited financial counselor. So I'm not a financial planner. I don't do anything with giving advice on where to invest on your retirement. I can give you education on what a Roth RIA versus a 401k and a traditional IRA, what those are. Okay. But I don't provide long-term financial advice in terms of investment. So my piece is more education, helping you establish good systems, of good budget, helping you get out of debt. Really, my focus too is just simplifying money and making sure that the message is that there's not just one way to manage your money. There's so many there's different ways and approaches, and that you don't need to get stuck in one way. So I do that obviously through my podcast. I do that one-on-one coaching. I also have a membership group as well that's called the Fearless Money Sisterhood, and in there is just not necessarily one-on-one coaching, is just more of a group setting where we have Q&A calls, and this, I think, similar to your program as well. And it is mainly, my focus is just personal finance, and that's what I work on.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll definitely put some links to that so people can find you if they want to come join the group, listen to the podcast, all of that. So how did you end up doing this? What brought you to becoming a certified financial counselor?
Yeah, accredited financial counselor. Basically, I've always felt I was good at money. Money was like a very important thing to me, just because there was always a lack of when I grew up. That was the thing my parents were always telling me, that they didn't have money. So I became very independent, and as independent as you can be as a 10-year-old, right? Babysitting, they let me babysit newborns at that time. I mean, I don't think they do that anymore, but I really started noticing the importance of money and the lack of, and what stress it had on my parents. So I knew I didn't want that for me in my future. So I started really learning a little more about money management. My dad taught me a little bit, because he taught me what not to do from their mistakes. Mm-hmm. And then I became, my intention wasn't to go into finances. I think it was just something that it happened later on in life, just because I became married to my husband, who's in the Air Force. And as a military spouse, moving every couple of years, maintaining a career is not that easy to do. So I was soul searching as to what can I do so when we pick up and leave, I can take that with me. Because at the very beginning, I did different things just to have a job. And the other part of it that was important to me was, we had the conversation, my husband and I, that when we had kids, I was going to be at home. He was going to be gone enough. And I didn't want to have a 9-to-5 job that I wasn't able to volunteer at my kids' school. I wouldn't be able to be at home when the boys got home. Those things were important to me. So I was really looking for a way to be able to do something, because a career for me is definitely important, but to be able to basically have my cake and eat it too. And my husband actually came across this, what's called the Military Spouse Fellowship Program. And the whole incentive of this program, it's a scholarship, and it gives you if you apply and get in, it pays for you to go through the financial counseling certification. He showed me that, and he knew I was all about money and managing it. I was really on top of those things. So I figured that was a good way for me. And that was just starting. I'm like, okay, this is the thing that I want to do, and I can help people, which is a big part of who I am. And I had to figure out, how am I going to do this each time we move? Because I didn't want to go back to a 9-to-5. At this time, I had already been out of the workforce 10 years or 8 years, and there was just I couldn't see myself going back. So I stumbled upon the online world, and I was like, this is perfect, right? So I can build my business online and move as we go, and I won't have to start over again. So that's really how it started.
I think that's the way a lot of women have been starting their businesses in the last, however many years. I was reading this article the other day about the rise of the mumpreneur, and it was in England, so they say mumpreneur instead of mompreneur.
Yes.
And their point was that a lot of it is down to inhospitable workplaces being pushed out, having, unreasonable maternity leave expectations and things like that, and lack of paternity leave, which I find funny because England has so much more maternity leave than we have. But, and while all of that's true, like if workplaces were more hospitable to moms, working our careers, not around families, but in conjunction, if there were better ways to do it, we probably wouldn't see quite as many. But at the same time, think of the options before the internet. Thank God we have the internet. I know.
Right. And things have evolved, because even now with the internet, the jobs, the 9-to-5 has evolved, where there's telework sometimes, there's different things. So that has changed some, that dynamic. But when I started off, there was internet. I mean, it wasn't too long. I'm aging myself, but it wasn't around too long at that time. But there was, at that time, there wasn't that many military spouses that were on their own, like as far as entrepreneurship. It was teachers or the nurses. At least that's what I saw at the very beginning. So I didn't know how I was going to make it work. I started doing some consulting actually in Arizona, University of Arizona, and doing some things like that. But until I found what I really wanted to do.
Well, that's great. So was your husband stationed here in Arizona? Was that when
we were at Davis Monthan for actually were we there a year? Oh my God. We've just moved around so many times. I think we were there just a year.
Wow. That does sound like a difficult lifestyle to maintain, moving on. How often do you guys move?
Oh gosh. So we've been married a little over 16 years, and this is either our 8th or 9th. I've lost, I'd have to go back and count one by one. So it's been averaging about maybe 2 years, every 2 years. So
when I was a kid, we moved quite a bit. Not for that. It was my mother's second husband did spec houses.
Okay.
Back, now they call them flips or whatever. But, and back then what he would do is we'd buy a really crappy house. We'd move into it and live in a construction zone until it was nice. And then we'd move again. So I always had the crappy house in the construction zone that I didn't want to invite any friends to. And we didn't move far, but it meant different school districts. So I find that hard. You have kids, don't you?
Yes, 2 boys. So they've been troopers. So my oldest is 14. And actually this is the time that it gets harder. So we've been fortunate. We've been here. This is our 3rd year here. And, but I know this next move will definitely be tough. And because being in teenagehood, that really changes everything. Yeah. But then again, he has moved since the beginning. We got married. We had him 2 years later. And then he's been on all the moves with us. My youngest, of course, he's 9, so he hasn't been on all the moves, but they've been definitely troopers. I mean, as long as it's all what you make it, it's about the excitement that you give it. And it was funny because I always get all like, when we found anytime we find out we're going to move, I get all excited. Hey, guess what? We're going to go on a new adventure. We're going to meet new friends, all the positive things I throw out. And so the move here was hard on my son. So he was a preteen, and it was really difficult. So my youngest, his younger brother, it was so funny. He really imitated like what I would normally say, but hey, this is going to be, and it was just so funny how much they're listening to that.
Well, that's good. That is great. And actually, I do think doing some traveling, at least when you're young, really broadens your horizons. Did you guys ever live overseas with the kids?
We did one. So that was just with my oldest. We were in Lima, Peru. So we were in South America for a couple years, and that was fabulous.
Wow.
That was one of my favorite.
That is neat. That is neat. Yeah. Traveling with kids. It's different than traveling without the kids.
Yes. No, traveling kids internationally is quite interesting. By yourself too. I've done it. That's been an adventure.
But I was thinking this kind of brings us full circle too on those things that you can control and those things you can't control. Being a military spouse, you can't necessarily control where your husband gets posted, but you have control over the mood and the attitude, the whole.
Absolutely. And that makes a world of a difference for sure.
Yeah. So maybe we could end this episode thinking about how we can take this next 4 years into this new not election cycle, but cycle of presidency. How we can make this an adventure, and how women can really continue to come together in the way that they did in support of Hillary for being our almost first female president. What else can we put all that energy into? How else can we keep going? I mean, we have the wage gap we could work on. There's still tons of other glass ceilings we could work on. What do you think?
I mean, there's so many phenomenal women entrepreneurs now that we just need to highlight more of that. We need to highlight what women are doing now. Recently, I was just actually, since we both podcast, I was at a podcasting conference, and literally the statistics of women podcasters to women bloggers was astounding. Like how many, it was a high percentage of female bloggers, and then just really small percentage of women podcasters. And it just showed the opportunity. So I think really supporting each other. I know you're good about that. I try to be really good about that, and just really highlighting like all these fabulous women, because there's so much talent out there. It's unreal. And just sharing the love of each other, I think will speak volumes.
I think that's a fantastic way to end our podcast show here right now, is supporting each other, coming together. Yeah, and I totally agree. I love having other podcasters on my podcast, because it does, the conversation flows pretty easily, because we're both used to talking recorded. Actually, I found most people don't get hung up and don't have any problem. As I say that, I kind of stumble over my words, right?
Hey, it happens. I do that all the time.
But also just, my audience is probably similar to your audience. I bet my audience would love your audience, and it's all good. And I do feel like podcasting has opened up this whole new world, just because it's so easy to create this content. You and I have a conversation. We could have had this conversation without recording it, but we recorded it, and now we have things to share with people, which will help be enlightening and edifying, and people will enjoy it. So
there could be podcasting about what we can do as women, too. I mean, there's just so many things we can definitely do. It's a matter of doing them and taking the time, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I'll be sure that we share links to your podcast and your group and your website, so people can go check out Her Money Matters and find out what else Jen has going on in her world. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.